I'm going to show you everything you need to know to play a Destruction Warlock in Mr. Pandaria Classic. Let's start off with what race to play. If you're going with Alliance, then you can probably say that you're going to want to go Worgen for the extra crit chance. If you are going Horde, however, I would recommend Troll for the Berserking buff. Basically, every 2 minutes you can get an extra 20% haste for 20 seconds, which is like a mini bloodlust that Trolls get as their racial. Otherwise, I would say to go with Orc, however, Troll is going to be better, in my opinion. For the talents we have in Mr. Pandaria Classic, it's much more simplified now, and you can change out your talents whenever you want with Tomes of the Clear Mind. So on the first row, I would say to go with Dark Regeneration. Every 2 minutes, it's going to restore 30% of you and your pet's health and increase how much healing you receive. Meaning, on cooldown, you can choose when to get a massive heal and receive extra healing. You could also go for Soul Leech, where some of your spells grant you and your pet a shield that absorbs damage, and that's going to be passively giving you that absorb shield throughout the fights. So it's up to you whether you want an on-demand cooldown or something more passive. I would go for Dark Regeneration. On the next line, I would recommend Mortal Coil. On a 45-second cooldown, causes the enemy to run in horror for 3 seconds and restores 15% of your health. The other ones are more just crowd control. Demonic Breath sends a cone in front of you, reducing target movement speed, and Shadow Fury stuns enemies, but they have no healing, whereas Mortal Coil has some crowd control, but also healing as well, hence why we're going for that option. Then we're going to be pretty much going with Soul Link. 20% of all damage taken is split with your summoned demon. Additionally, some of the damage you deal is converted to healing on you and your summoned demon, so basically just a passive healing there. Unbound Will is going to be best on the level 60 line. A 1 minute cooldown, you purge all magic effects, movement impairing effects, etc. on you and your demon. And then we have some really interesting ones. I would recommend to go with Grimoire of Supremacy. This is going to give you access to stronger demons that we can summon. Now, as a Destruction Warlock in Mr. Pandaria Classic, I would recommend you go with the Grimoire of Supremacy, and you then will summon an Observer, as you can see here, as your demon of choice. Lastly, it's going to be Archimonde's Darkness, where your Dark Soul spells have 2 charges at level 90. That's going to affect your Dark Soul instability cooldown, which is one of your main DPS cooldowns. It increases your critical strike chance by 30% for 20 seconds. Archimonde's Darkness gives you an extra charge of this, so 1 charge rather than 2. Moving on to Glyphs. We don't have a load of amazing ones for destruction. We have Glyph of Conflagrate, where it no longer requires Immolate to snare the target, so you can get an extra little CC in there passively when using your Conflagrate. Glyph of Siphon Life, your Immolate spell, which we're going to be using quite a lot in the rotation, will heal you for some of your maximum damage when dealing periodic damage. And then Glyph of Unending Resolve, where your damage reduction from that spell is reduced, but the cooldown is reduced by an entire minute. Now, instead of going for Glyph of Unending Resolve, you could go for a few others. There's the Curse of the Elements, where your Curse of Elements hits an additional 2 nearby targets. Your Curse of Elements is the main curse you'll be using, increasing the magic damage taken by 5% from your enemy. So this could also affect nearby targets if you use that glyph. So it depends really how many enemies you're fighting. But always keep this curse up at all times, increasing the magic damage done, not just by you, but everyone to that target. You could also go for Soulstone, whereby when you resurrect someone with a Soulstone, they're returned to life with 100% health, which can just obviously help when battle-resing people with your Soulstones. But personally, I think the best one to go with would be Unending Resolve. The minor glyphs aren't so important. We have Hand of Gul'dan, where that spell can now be used at a targeted location. Unending Breath, where you get increased swim speed if using it. Very small use cases here, but still it can be useful. And Glyph of Nightmares, where your Fellsteed and Dreadspeed can actually cross water while running and leave a trail of flames. For Mr. Pandaria Classic, I'm teaming up with Zygor to give you 20% off with code Javier. Zygor gives you the fastest and most efficient leveling experience. As you can see here, looking at killing snow leopards, I can even click all the different waypoint coordinates to see the fastest way to get to the different areas they may be in. It can also look at flight paths and show me which ways to go, including all of the different travel options. And when choosing quest rewards, it can even tell me which is the best upgrade for me. And this will be even spec dependent. I can click on the gloves, complete the quest, and then it will even tell me to equip them and shows me how much attributes and stats I will gain by equipping these items. Maybe even talents. I can use the talent advisor with Zygor, simply clicking that I want to be an Affliction Warlock, and it's going to configure it automatically to show me the best leveling build for Affliction for me. The fun doesn't stop there, though, because it's available for SOD, Classic, Retail, Leveling. I can choose zones I want to go into, and it'll tell me how to get there and do all of the leveling in that zone, even if you're going back to old zones that you've leveled out of. Dungeons, dailies, events, reputation, gold making, professions, pets and mounts, and achievements. You can use as little or as much as you like. And don't forget, you can get 20% off with code Javier and battle past everyone at lightning speed in Mr. Pandaria Classic. Now moving on to the important part, of course, which is the rotation. So what I've got here is the single target rotation, and then beneath it is the AoE rotation. So number one, we're going to be using Conflagrate as much as we can. This is going to target the enemy, exploding and dealing damage and reducing their movement speed. You'll notice it says it generates burning embers, and critical strikes double this effect. So what are burning embers? Well, rather than soul shards, we actually have these up here, burning embers, and using Conflagrate will generate these burning embers. The way it works in Mr. Pandaria Classic is that each Warlock spec has a different version of soul shards. So Affliction has soul shards, whereas Destruction will actually have burning embers instead. And we can have up to 4 burning embers. We're then going to use our Chaos Bolt to spend our burning embers. So we use Conflagrate as much as we possibly can to generate those burning embers, and then we use our Chaos Bolt whenever we can in order to spend our burning embers. Now this is where it gets a tad confusing. I'm telling you to use Conflagrate and then spend those burning embers on Chaos Bolt. However, when you use your Conflagrate, you will get free charges of Backdraft. Incinerate's cast time and mana cost is reduced by 30%. And you may be thinking, okay, it says Incinerate, but it will also reduce the cast time on Chaos Bolt. However, it's a lot more efficient to use the Backdraft on your Incinerate. So I would use your Incinerate charges to use your Backdraft and then be using your Chaos Bolt in order to spend those burning embers. So technically, Incinerate goes here, and you would put Chaos Bolt here. However, the actual priority is going to be that you use Chaos Bolt as a higher priority if you don't have any burning embers. So the priority would go Conflagrate if you can, Chaos Bolt if we don't have any burning backdraft. Okay, we do. And then we're going to use Immolate and keep this up at all times on the target. And then we're going to use our Incinerate to spend those backdrafts on our target. And then we're going to use our Chaos Bolt to spend the burning embers. So Conflagrate as much as you can. We're going to use Chaos Bolt, but as long as we don't have any backdrafts, which we do, keep up Immolate on your target at all time because it adds a dot, and then spend those burning, the backdraft on your Incinerate. And then now we're going to spend our Chaos Bolts burning embers on here. And that's basically how the rotation goes. Now, when your target reaches 20% health or lower, instead of using Chaos Bolt, you're going to use Shadow Burn. This does damage. It's only usable on enemies with lower than 20% health and restores some of your mana after 5 seconds. It also costs a Burning Ember to use, and basically it does more damage than Chaos Bolt will. So let's just go through that again. Conflagrate as much as you can to generate these Burning Embers. Use your Incinerate to spend your backdraft stacks. Keep up your Immolate at all time, and then spend your Burning Embers with your Chaos Bolt. Now, once you get into the rotation, you will notice that you won't be using your Chaos Bolt that often because it does take a while to actually build up the Burning Embers needed in order to use it. So you will be using Incinerate a lot more than you're using your Chaos Bolt here. And then at 20% health, like I said, use Shadow Burn instead of Chaos Bolt. Keep up your Curse of the Elements at all times. And now let's go through the other cooldowns, which is Dark Soul Instability. So this is going to massively increase your critical strike chance. Before you use Dark Soul Instability, what I would recommend doing is trying to build up as many Burning Embers as you possibly can, because we can then use a ton of our Chaos Bolts in that increased critical strike window. Imagine you can only use your Chaos Bolt once. Well, then you're not going to get most of the use out of the massive critical strike chance that you have in that cooldown window. In that same window, you would also use your potions and things like that, and you can also summon a Terror Guard on 10-minute cooldown. You do also have a summon Abyssal. That's if you are taking the talent that I showed you, Grimoire of Supremacy. Now, the Abyssal is more for AoE fights, and the Terror Guard is more for single target fights. Speaking of AoE fights, what do we do in an AoE environment? Well, keep up your single target rotation and try and keep up Immolate on all of the targets that you possibly can. And then we can use Fire and Brimstone. Your Immolate, Incinerate, Conflagrate and Curse spells consume a Burning Ember and will hit all targets within 10 yards of the target and deal half of their normal damage. So when we use that, as you can see here, it basically changes your spells, and when you use them, it goes back. So it's going to use a Burning Ember to do so, but your target will be hit by your other spells, and nearby targets will be hit, sorry. Then we can use our Incinerate as well on that target, again, keeping up our single target rotation. And what we can also do is use Havoc. Causes the next Chaos Bolt or 3 other single target spells cast by the Warlock to also strike this target. So I would select this target, use Havoc on them, and then when I use my other single target spells, it's also going to hit this target over here who has Havoc on them. Apart from that, we're going to use Rain of Fire to do AoE damage on all nearby targets as well. So keep up your single target rotation on one target, keep up Immolate on everyone that you can, use Fire and Brimstone to basically use your Chaos Bolt and hit other targets, and also use Havoc to hit another target as well, and then use Rain of Fire to hit as many targets as you can, and that's the AoE rotation. Going into the utilities, etc. that we have Dark Regeneration from the talents. Your Life Tap is now called Ember Tap, which heals some of your health. We have a cooldown called Flames of Zoroth, which will revive your last demon instantly in case they die. Havoc we've discussed, Mortal Coil is in the talents we've discussed. And then we have our passives. So Aftermath, your Rain of Fire, doesn't need to be channeled and can generate Burning Embers. So that Rain of Fire one I mentioned, you no longer need to channel it, and it also can actually generate some Burning Embers for you. Backdraft, when you cast Conflagrate, the cast time and mana cost of your next 3 Incinerates or Chaos Bolt is reduced. Backlash gives you a chance when hit by a physical attack to reduce the cast time of your next Incinerate. Probably won't happen too much, obviously, in raiding. We have our Burning Embers explained. And then our Mastery, Ember Storm. This increases the damage of Immolate, Incinerate, Fell Flame and Conflagrate. So basically, increases the damage of our fire spells. Pyroclasm, our Chaos Bolt will be affected by Backdraft, but consumes 3 charges. So when you see that you've got 3 stacks of Backdraft, only 1 Chaos Bolt will be consumed, or be able to usable by that. We can create health stones and soul wells, of course, so that our allies can also get our health stones. You've got a lot of curses available, but the one we are going to be using is the Curse of the Elements. We also have Dark Intent, which you're going to be using at all times, increasing the spell power and stamina of all your party and raid members. We have Fear to fear our enemies. Health Funnel, of course, which we're not really going to be using. Howl of Terror, which is basically a massive fear effect. We have Soul Shatter, which reduces the threat by 90% for all enemies nearby. Really great for reducing threat. Soul Stones, of course, in order to basically get a battle res. Twilight Ward is really good. It's going to stop any shadow or holy damage. Last 30 seconds. Unending Resolve, where you reduce your damage taken by 20% and prevents the spells from being interrupted or silenced for 8 seconds. We also have some passives like Fell Armor, increasing your health and the amount of health generated through spells and effects. And we also have Pandemic. When refreshing your periodic damage effects, the duration remaining of the previous effect is added, increasing the duration. Meaning, when we use Immolate, as you can see here, it's up for 14 seconds or 15 seconds. Now, once you've got 50% or less remaining of that spell, I can use Immolate again, and it will add that to the new one. As you can see, there's 18 seconds now remaining on that Immolate. So you don't have to wait for it to fall off. Because of the Pandemic effect, you actually need to refresh this when 50% or less of the duration is remaining on your enemy, and it will add that onto the duration for you, meaning that you don't actually lose any of the effect. And there we go, that is the rotation for Destruction Warlock. A bit more complex than something like Affliction, but once you get into it, it's very, very fun. Next up is the stat priority, which is really, really important. So, number one, we want Intellect. This is because it adds more spell power and critical strike rating. Pretty self-explanatory there. One that's a bit more complex is your second priority, and that is your hit rating. So you need 7.5% hit rating to make sure that, against raid bosses that is, that your spells will never miss. Now, in Mr. Pandaria Classic, expertise also equals hit rating at a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning if you get 1% hit expertise rating, it will equal 1% hit rating. Now, at level 90, you do need 5100 hit rating to hit the hit cap. If you are a gnome or a human with sword and short blade specialization and you're using one of those, then remember you will actually need less and you'll only need 4760. After that, we're going to go for Mastery, which is basically, like I said before, increases the damage of your fire spells, etc. So most of the spells we're using. After that, it's going to be Crit Chance, so we can do more damage. And then after that, it's going to be Haste, which for Destruction Warlocks isn't as useful as it is for something like Affliction. For your gems, it's quite interesting. So Burning Primal Diamond is going to be what you want in your meta slot. If you are having trouble hitting your hit cap, we can go with Precise Rubies, as shown here. If you're not having issues with that, then we have the Brilliant Primordial Ruby. In your yellow slot, you can go for the Artful Vermilion Onyx or Perfect Artful Tiger Opal, etc. And again, in the blue slot, there are options if you are struggling with your hit cap, like a Rigid River's Heart. Otherwise, again, if you're not having issues with that, then it's the Veiled Imperial Amethyst. For the enchants we've got a few on the shoulders here from Inscription, but if you are an inscriber yourself, you can get this super duper whooper one as seen here. Superior Intellect on your cloak and Lightweave Embroidery if you're a tailor. Glorious Stats on your chest. Intellect again on the wrists. You can actually get fur lining with Intellect if you're a leather worker. And you can also add an extra socket if you are a blacksmith, and that goes for the hands as well. On the hands, you can get Mastery, Haste, Expertise, which will of course help with the spell hit cap should you need it. Living Steel Belt Buckle everyone can add, no matter your profession. Cerulean Spell Thread, etc. on here, and there's Master Spell Thread if you are a tailor. Pandaran Step on your feet. If you're an enchanter, you can get Greater Intellect on both your rings, and then you've got Jade Spirit, Elemental Force, or Wind Song on your weapons. And you can also put Major Intellect if you are using an offhand or can use an offhand as a caster as well. Regarding the professions that you may want to take, tailoring gives you about 320 intellect. Blacksmithing does, jewel crafting does, alchemy, enchanting does. They all pretty much give the same amount, but leatherworking always comes through with an extra 10 intellect. Herbalism gives 480 haste as well, so not bad. But generally, it doesn't matter which profession you take in Mists of Pandaria. For consumables, as a caster, I'm filming this on my mage, but it's the same for all casters. You want Potion of the Jade Serpent, increasing intellect by 4,000 for 25 seconds. You've got Flask of the Warm Sun, increasing intellect by 1,000 for an hour. And then you've also got a mana potion if you need it, called a Master Mana Potion. There's a Potion of Focus as well for casters, should they need it for their mana as well. Master Healing Potions are the healing potions, and generally you're going to be using a Great Pandaran Banquet to get 275 in intellect. If you're using food on your own, however, it's going to be a Mogu Fish Stew, which gives 300 intellect. There is a Braised Turtle, which is 275 as well, and Swirling Mist Soup, which gives 250 intellect. But generally, the Mogu Fish Stew is the absolute best, with 300 intellect for all casters. And there we go, guys. That is how you play Destruction Warlock in Mr. Pandaria Classic. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Again, if you would like to get Zygor, don't forget you can get money off with my code Javier in the description linked below. And if you want to support the channel, you can do that on my Patreon, which will unlock a VIP channel in the Discord and get you some LVUI profiles and lots of other cool bits and bobs. Should you be looking for other specs of Warlock or any other class in MoP Classic, then check out the playlist you now see on screen.